And so what I realized through some coaching was that, hey man, you want to bring people in your funnel and you can get the bad people out of your funnel. So you got to be relentlessly authentic to bring the right people closer to you and the bad ones away from you. When I learned that, I was like, man, those are the most freeing 2 words I can ever. Now I can go be me. And it was almost like getting permission to be me.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Aging Entrepreneur, and we have a special guest today. I was actually introduced through him through a mutual friend, and his name is Andy Smith, and he's part of multiple companies. He's been down the entrepreneurial wave quite a few times now, and we're just honored to have him on this podcast today because he's going to show us all the great things there is when it comes to running a business. Isn't that right, Andy?
Hey boys. Well, thanks for having me. It's a true pleasure.
Andy, we're glad to have you, man. And I got to ask the main kickoff question that I love to ask as a entrepreneur. What is the biggest fear that you had to overcome when you started your first business?
Ooh, excellent question. So as an entrepreneur, fear is on your mind daily unless you force it out, right? Because you have the fear of, am I making the right decisions? The fear of, am I going to run out of money? The fear of, what am I doing? If I had to say my biggest fear, it is fear of failure. And I'm very, as a personality type, very achievement driven. And so that fear of failure was the fear, but that's also for me, the driver, right? So that gave me the mental capacity to say, hey, I'm scared like crazy. We're going to not succeed at this and I'm going to look bad. I might lose a little money, but I got to go make it happen. And when you have that fire in your belly, right? That drive, then it allows me at least to go say, hey, I don't care what we got to do, but we're going to get real creative and we're going to get real hungry for it. And when you put those together, man, that's when you find sparks.
I love that so much, Andy. You got to tell me though, how has that fear of failure and the taking action, how has that worked out like in practical action steps? What have you done? Hey, I feel this fear, but I know I have to do these things. What have you done something to overcome that fear?
Dude, I tell you, so March of 2020 was a crazy time for all of us, right? Just figuring out, hey, we got this thing, we don't know what it is, right? And at the time, we were in our second venture, and we had a manufacturing facility, and we had to furlough a group of workers. We're like, holy crap, man! We were in oil and gas. Our industry's plummeted. People are decimated left and right. All the companies are changing now and they don't need our stuff, right? That was March of 2020. And so the very next day, you got to look in the mirror and you got to say, crap, what are we going to do? We got people relying on us for jobs. We got people whose family rely on us and we can't employ them any longer. And so we went to social media, and it's funny, right? Because that was a point where we said, we don't even know what tomorrow's going to look like, but let's go out and talk. Let's go out and be vocal so that, because the two things we do know, that if you have gratitude and your humility is there, that's the foundation that we needed. So we went out to social media and started putting out messaging about that. And we didn't even have a product to sell, right? We were just like, hey, we're going to win this thing. So it gave us a mindset and a framework to operate in of humility and gratitude that took us through that fear factor. That's sort of the feel-good thing, right? If you had to take an example of like, we've been multiple times where we have a business and we don't know if we're going to make payroll in 2 weeks, right? And so when you're dealing with those kinds of things, the one unwritten rule of entrepreneurship is don't miss payroll. Payroll.
Yes. Or as my grandfather put it, you've never lived until you made payroll.
Dude, signing the front of the check. I got a colleague who says that signing the front of the check is a whole lot different than signing the back.
Oh, no doubt. Hey, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah,
man. And so, when you got that coming up, you get real hungry to start calling in accounts receivable, right? You get real hungry to start looking for an investor at that point. There's some things you do, right, that is just a little outside the norm. But I don't know, man. Sometimes it takes getting to that level, right, where you're like, we're at the bottom now. We got to go do something. And I've been there quite a few times. I've been on the other side quite a few times. So it's fun to have seen both perspectives.
So this is actually a good little segue. So tell us about you, Andy. Tell us about where you've been, where you're at now, company wise, and things like that. So our audience has an idea. Because like jumping in, like you've obviously seen a lot already, but kind of give us a background of you a little bit.
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town outside of Birmingham, Alabama. Realized that, a lot of the people who lived in that small town, they were there. They were going to stay there, and it was their roots and community. And I had moved into that small town in 7th grade. So I was used to kind of, hey, we went from one thing, now let's go do something a little different, even if it's just moving schools, right? So went to Auburn University, graduated with an engineering degree. And I only went engineering because I didn't know what else I wanted to do, but knew with that I could go back and do anything. Did the real engineer thing, right? Went and worked at a nuclear power plant for a couple of years. Realized I'm not an engineer. I love the presentation, the sales side of things. So got a job in Atlanta, Belgium company. I was a sales engineer. Met an interesting individual from Europe. So my boss at the time came because he was an acquired company of that Belgian company. And so my job was to take that product to market in the US for the first time. So I learned a lot of how do you segment a market? How do you take a new product to market? Had a chance to live in Canada for a few years and a very entrepreneurial experience inside of a big company. So that was a good learning path. But I was always unhappy. Like I'd go home, I'd be like, man, I got this great job. Like we're making decent money. I'm always unhappy. I'm always complaining about things in the company. And it just hit me one day that do something about it. Don't just be that complainer where you're going through life having this job that you just think sucks. Like do something about it. So my boss at the time and he was entrepreneur extraordinaire. We decided that in 2007, we were going to found our own company. So we co-founded a company. And our sole purpose with that company was just to pay ourselves a salary. We hoped, hey, if we can get a few jobs and just pay ourselves a salary, man, this is going to be good. Like we're our own boss, right? Like this would be great. So there we go. I went and got a home equity line of credit on my house and 2 kids. One was a baby. We're like, all right, here we go. And so
I feel that, man. That's where we were. Keep going.
Yeah, right. And so going to win our first job. Our first job was in Mexico with a Chilean engineering company. And I'm going to get on the plane. And we were a very small startup, but I believe really big in brand. So we tried to go out of the gate with a lot of brand from the beginning and, logo, website. We were even on Facebook even earlier, right? But our competitor was founded in the 1880s. They've been around forever, huge company. And I'm going to get on the plane to go to Mexico to meet with this potential customer. And I see the director of the company on there to go compete against me at the job.
Oh, man.
I'm like, oh, dude, my home equity line, how am I going to pay the thing back,
Right. I'm done.
And so it was a week's job. I actually took a friend's dad who was from Peru who could help me kind of with the language, right? Spent a week down there negotiating that job. And unfortunately, at the end of that week, they announced us was the winner. Me and the other guy were sitting in the hotel lobby. My phone rang, his phone didn't. And that was how they told us, like, you won. So that kind of launched our first company where we were providing product. And our product was an enclosed burner for the oil and gas space. So it's an environmental play. And we just sucked and made mistakes all over the place and just learned as we went and thought we knew everything, realized we really don't know nothing. I always, the wrong thing to do as an entrepreneur is realize on yourself only, right? And so I was really bad at that for several, many years and just would only operate within my own mind space.
We call that trying to be the secret.
Yeah. And I really struggled with that, right? And so venture number 1 started in 2007. We get to 2012. I get a letter in the mail. Somebody wants to buy the company. I thought, I didn't know you could sell companies. Like, that's interesting. So, but I threw it aside, threw it in the corner. I remember I set it right under the printer. And then I got an email from another person who wanted to buy the company. I was like, wow, let me pull that letter back. And so we did our own process because I had no idea there was people who could help you with that. And we ultimately took us a year, but we ended up selling that company to a private equity firm. We stayed on for a few years and operated it. Got to see what it was like when a group of Harvard MBAers come into your company and how that experience goes.
I'm sure they destroyed it.
Well, and so it's funny, right? Because again, another naive moment of mine, I was like, these guys are smart, dude. They went to Harvard, man. They must be like awesome. And what I realized was that entrepreneurs, they have a superpower too, right? Their superpower is the nimble, quick, creative, all that get her done mentality. And Harvard people have a superpower, but the two together don't always sort of match. And so I got to see that up close, board meetings, all that was really fancy. And then they ended up exiting that company in 2016. And so then found myself thinking at the age of probably late 30s, man, I want to retire. Like, this is good. I'm retiring. I'm done, and throwing the football in the side yard with the kid. And it's like, nobody in my neighborhood thinks I'm working. They think I'm unemployed, And I'm like, man, that's not what life has to offer. So I jumped right into another business with some friends and family. And we grew a business. We were really good at growing revenue and really good at cutting costs as oil and gas industry went up and down. Mm-hmm. So we navigated through that. We ultimately exited that this past year. And that's where I pumped the brakes. And I was like, okay, we got to figure out what we're going to do for the next 40 years, right? How are we going to do this better, smarter, more intelligent, and take the things we've learned, maybe try to learn some more stuff. And so that's when the Blacksmith Venture idea came. It was very much a eureka moment for me because I had been an entrepreneur singularly one time, started and sold, a single entrepreneur, started, sold. And I realized what I love to do and what's inside of me is really helping entrepreneurs go from like zero to some momentum phase. And we're really good at that and really passionate about that. We have a small team. And so now our goal is to really try to do that at scale through the Blacksmith Venture platform, where we take and help entrepreneurs take their business and idea and grow it. Because what I found is when an entrepreneur starts, it's really exciting. When they start growing, it gets really, really hard. And when they get to about $1 million of sale or some number of revenue, it starts to get above their capacity as a person, right? As a single owner. Right. And so they can't get above that ceiling, right? And so we've been there and seen that and love helping them realize that, hey, you can really grow this thing. You can take this thing, but you've got to put some critical pieces in. Think about some things that you're not thinking about. And whether that person, that entrepreneur has that ability to get out of that mindset of, hey, I'm fearful, right? Of can I grow or not? What's that look like? Because I always felt in our first venture that we were growing so fast that the train was always very shaky. And it was like, we got to sail to take our risk away because this may quit at any moment,
Oh, we call that a bad shuttle reentry.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, exactly.
What it feels like.
I figured out. Yeah. And so I all these lessons you guys have, I figured out through like a whole bunch of hard crap. Right. And so, yeah. So
this is my third company. I feel you on that.
Well, there you go, brother. I love it. And so the things we're doing different this time. As an entrepreneur owner, I went and hired a compensated board of directors. And I don't know if a lot of people do that or not, but it's the most baller thing I've ever done. Like, these guys are amazing. They bring connections. They bring mindsets that we were negotiating a deal and I was 180 degrees out of phase on this thing, man. And those guys were like, whoa, think about this. And so a group of people who are supporting you and helping you grow, that's been an amazing change. And for the first time ever too, I brought on some investors, which is a whole new dynamic and a whole new thing. So I've kind of learning that as we go as well, but it's been a great ride so far.
Well, Andy, if you've had a chance to listen to some of our past episodes, which I think you have, mm-hmm. One of the things that we've geared the whole podcast to is that middle-aged person. By middle-aged to me, I'm talking somewhere between the age of maybe 32 and 50, right in that age range of people who may be in a job, who are looking to step out and to start their own thing. One of the things that appealed me so much about having you on the podcast, and I was so excited when Michael brought you up, is that you appear to have this ability to build to sell. And not every entrepreneur wants to build something that they want to keep and it be a legacy organization. How do you change your mindset from being an entrepreneur who has this idea to turn it into a business to thinking about it as this is an asset that has the potential to sell for X amount of dollars? That's a different mindset. Talk to me about that a little bit.
It's like your house, right? Like, you buy a house, you don't necessarily buy it and hold on to it forever. You might want to grow it, add some additions to it and make it something that you sell, right? And so I think that's the opportunity that entrepreneurs struggle with a lot. Exactly what you just said, because you got two things. You've got, I joked about the Harvard MBA guys, right? But you got the guys who buy and sell companies all day long, and they're flipping stock papers, right? They're flipping pieces of paper, arbitraging stuff and doing fancy financial engineering. They haven't hired the first person. They haven't looked, Mary Lou in the face and said, hey, you go home today because you're just not feeling it. They haven't dealt with all that. So that's why I love on the other side, the entrepreneur side, they create something, right? And so you have an opportunity as an entrepreneur, and that could be, if you just got an idea, you have the opportunity to create something, put your flavor, your love into it, take it to a certain level, and then, like you said, build something to exit. Because that's something I meet so many entrepreneurs in the fabrication space, because that's where we like to play in that little realm. You'll go into their shops and they're in that 50-year-old range, right? Where they've started something, they had a great life. And now they're like, well, I guess I'm just going to turn the lights off one day and leave. Like, bro, you've built something wonderful here,
This is an asset. You don't take your car and abandon it on the side of the road.
No, and that's what so many people do, because they've got that mindset of, well, this is what I do, and I can't release it. Because it was a very, very hard thing for me on our first venture, because it was my baby, right? Like I created this thing and co-founded this thing, but all the passion, all the love you put into it, and now you have this baby and you just want to hold on to it every time. Because I felt like somebody was buying the baby. And I just have a different relationship now with businesses. For me, it's about the people, right? Because you're impacting people inside that organization, and you're building this thing to grow into, to sell it, because we're not just going to turn off the lights one day, right?
Right.
I think you're right on, man. And I think it's just a mindset thing. And I do think it has to do a lot with the baby, because people, even my co-founder, right? Like he was he was probably 50 when we started that. I was late 20s. And even at that age, that was a baby for him, right? That was his business. And so it's just having a different relationship with the business, I think. And I love the people side. So that's where I put my passion now, and not on the business per se.
Right. Take great care of the people who take care of the business, and then sell the business. It's interesting. I can tell this, Michael, I don't know if you're able to point this out, but I can tell somebody who's made that mental switch. We meet with lots and lots of business owners on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And I can tell the business owners, like a nimble POS, where this is another business versus somebody who is dug in, like, this is part of my identity. Right. And I'll be honest with you, from my perspective, like Nick, the marketer, that's part of my identity. This is part of I think of it in a more legacy format. Selling my business doesn't come up in my brain. It doesn't. Now I've got different purpose behind my business. And our mission, vision, and values line up that way. But some people are wanting to start a business that they can sell. I see it all the time.
Oh yeah, and I feel like
and there's nothing wrong with that.
And I feel like it's typically their second and third business that they're working on. Like their first one, I think, like you mentioned, Andy, it's like it's their baby. They don't know what to do with it. It's a love story, and they're afraid to let go. But once that happens, then you're like, okay, wait, there's more to here than just this love story, this baby I had. There's actually other things I can do with this. But I just love that you actually had that mental switch, because I think we talked to a lot of people that are afraid of that. And then also just hearing, like, this is something we've never brought on the podcast before, but what it looks like to hire a board of directors and bring on investors to boost your company in the right direction. Like we haven't had a chance to really talk much about that because we don't really have the experience on that. I'd love to hear more from you. What drove that decision, and what were like the had no idea this was a part of it, this is fantastic, or hey, I probably should have done that a little differently, but I've learned my lesson.
Yeah. It was a pretty clear inflection point for me. It was, so go back for me, it was December of 2019. I'm in the second business and I'm doing everything wrong. The reason I'm doing everything wrong is I'm doing it just like I did the first business. And the first business was, 2007, 8, 9, 10, internet's cranking up. You got Facebook, you got all this stuff. And we were on all of that. And we took all that same sort of mindset in our second business. And I was out jogging with a guy one day. And he was like, hey, I got this book I want you to read. So I get this book, and Didn't See It Coming by Carey Nieuwhof was the author. And I'm reading it over Thanksgiving break. I'm like, holy crap, I got a pride problem. Like, I got a big issue here. I'm a mess. And I'm like, what's the answer? What's the answer? So I kept reading this book to get to the very end and realize that humility is the answer, right? And so I'm like, all right, I got to get out of myself here. So December of 2019, 1 month later, I went and attended this ultra high net worth conference. 800 people go to Boca Raton, big Ritz-Carlton. And I'm like, dude, this is going to be the most awkward thing in my world because this isn't the circle I run in, but I needed to get out of my own element, right? Out of my way and try to meet some new people. And so I go to this thing and I thought it was going to be really hard to meet people. And it was extremely easy to meet people. Everybody wants to come up and understand what you're doing. Even if they don't know you, it was fantastic 3-4 days, but I took a ton of notes and learned a lot. So then I realized here comes January of 2020. So a couple months later, and I hired my first ever CEO coach. And so I did that because when I sold the first company, I needed somewhere to take the energy. And I got really big into running these triathlons. So I spent 7 years as a side hustle running triathlons and had a coach and all this. I mean, I spent way too much time at it. But having the coach made such a difference for me. And so I was like, that was a game changer in the world of triathlon. It's always been a game changer in the world of athletics for me, going way back. But business, man, you don't hire no coach. Like, what do you want to do that for, right? So I did and thought, wow, this is pretty expensive. And what it did, though, is it put somebody to make me accountable who could really see, like, here's really your superpower, Andy. Here's really some things you're struggling with. Let's figure all this out. So over the course of about 9, maybe almost a year of working with him, he's like, okay, Andy, it's time to accelerate. Like, man, I thought we were accelerating, and we're kind of going along. And we figured out blacksmith. Like, blacksmith for me is my legacy. I want that to be the legacy. I've mentally tricked my brain that I can buy, sell companies under blacksmith, and blacksmith is the identity, right? But he goes, it's time to accelerate. I was like, well, what's accelerate mean? He's like, you need a board of directors. I'm like, dude, I don't want nobody telling me what to do, man. That last board I was part of, I don't need it, right? And so he's like, no. There's 2 types of boards. And explain the board of advisors who just sort of promote you. I'm like, oh, I got that, man. I got a bunch of bros around me who are like, we support all of our stuff. But the problem with my bro community, we're all the same guy. Like, we all sort of
you're at a peer level.
Yeah. Like, they come to me for advice. I go to them for advice. We're sort of like just sharing the same advice. So he goes, no, I have a better idea. I've talked to some people we know. Let's interview. So we interviewed very strategically 4 people to put on the board and to complement my things I love and to complement the weaknesses. So we've got like a rock star financial person, a deal person, and a strategic kind of person, and a SaaS person. And the acceleration can't be more faster in the upward direction. It's just been amazing how much knowledge that I've got, how much deal structure knowledge I've got, how much difference for me too. They think very long-term and very protect the house, think long-term. And oftentimes as entrepreneurs, we're so in it. You're just thinking about that next move and you have no idea what the moves after are going to look like. So you're just going move to move. They've helped me realize, hey, it's a chess game of down the road here. We want to reverse engineer to get to here. And that's been a new kind of mind-blowing thing for me.
Yeah, my mind's about to blow right now because I'm just thinking of how that could impact my own company. I know this is about you and I still want to talk about Andy Smith, but man, that's powerful because if I can take a nugget away myself, imagine how much more our listeners are getting off to the right track, right? Like, who are you surrounding yourself with that could be potential board members down the road? Are you putting the right kind of information? I love the didn't see it coming. Guess what's coming off of my 1 credit that I have going on right now with my Audible is going to be didn't see it coming. I will have that by the end of the day. And I love the fact that you're talking about humility and gratitude and the shift in your mind and the impact that that's made on your business. I'm so fired up that you have this holding company that you look at as your baby so that you have the freedom to sell these other companies without remorse. I love that. You also made the comment that kind of made it feel like a divorce almost where you said, hey, I had this one business and I took all of the wrong things into this next business and we were making the same mistakes. And here I am on number 3. And I feel like we've made those changes with the people and the personnel and the reading and trying to do away with the things that haven't worked in the past. But it just reminds me of like a divorce. I had this marriage. I took all of this other things into this new marriage and it's falling apart. At some point, you have to interject some type of change that isn't you, some outside force to help you be successful, even if your goal is to sell it.
Nailed it, dude. That's 100% right, because that's the baggage you carry, because it's comfortable and right? Like, I think back, business number 2, we get right back in. The first things we were thinking about was, how do we get all the people from number 1 in? Wrong. How do we do exactly that stuff? Wrong, right? And it's just like, exactly. Well, great analogy of taking all the baggage. You've got to really shake it off and give yourself some time and grace to do that. And that, well put. Lesson learned, that right there. Absolutely.
Well, let me ask you a question, man. How much gap was there in between your company that you sold or your first? I don't even know. Have you ever had a failed business? I didn't even ask that.
We have invested a ton of money, yes, and it's never failed, but we've lost a ton of money, 100%.
Okay, that's fair. We'll call it that. But has there been a gap where you've said, hey, you were talking about being the guy that everybody thought was unemployed out in the front yard throwing the ball. What was that time frame like? Because I would be willing to bet there's people out there that are interested. I owned a business. I failed at that business. I'm back into a job, but I can't scratch this itch, man. I've got to go do something else. You either have it or you don't. You either want it or you don't.
Yeah.
What was that like for you in between businesses, if you will?
What I should have done different, if I was looking back, it was a very short time. So it was probably, like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, right? And it was because, you know people, they start calling, hey, what are you doing? We know you're out. You want to do this, you want to do that. And if I was to give myself some advice going back, it would have been, hit the pause button, take a break, let that, when you're hustling a business from 2007 and you bootstrap it, never took any funding. And, we grew it to about a $22 million revenue over time. When you're doing that, that's a lot of work. And that was a long period of time. So it was, a good span of almost, 12 years, right? No, 9 years. And so I needed a break. I needed a refresher. I needed to relax. And I didn't take that. And I think that would have been a game changer just to get your head on, because then you can allow yourself to make that transitional switch. Now, if you've got that itch, and then of course, I, like you say, always have that continual itch. You can start stuff on the side. You can, nowadays, man, there's ways to take a business and get it incubated and started off with a whole bunch of outside tools where you don't need, you can do it without hiring a bunch of team day one, at least full-time team.
Andy, we live in the best environment, the best, most fertile soil to grow a business in the history of the world, in my opinion. Without any startup capital, I can open up a Facebook ads account or a Facebook account, period, an Instagram account or a YouTube channel, and for free, put my knowledge, my ability, my services, my wares out into the world and put it in front of thousands of people without having to pay for that. There is no more. If you're listening to this right now and you're wondering when's a good time to start a business, there is no better time that I can think of in history of the world to start a business than there is right now.
Yeah, amazing, right? And so my business partner, and we're still very close, he lives in Europe. And so he even goes as far as to say, in the United States of America, this is only the place possible where you could do something where somebody starts from scratch and can grow something as big and as far and as much as their imagination will allow them to take it. They can make their company just have a salary, or they can make their company $100 million. It's all possible right here, right now. And you're totally right, brother. I was at a conference 2 weeks ago, went to the gym that morning. I met somebody I knew and I was like, hey man, what are you doing these days? I knew you had the nice big job and all that. And he quit his job and he's hustling it, flipping Amazon merchandise. Has a virtual team of people who go out, stay-at-home moms he'll hire. They'll go out and do his thing. Guy's making 6 figures. I'm like, holy crap, man. If you're willing to risk it and hustle it, that right there is long. And I've seen it too, where you've got a ton of entrepreneurs who are, they're ready. They get that itch. They got to put that first dollar in, right? That first amount of money. Once they can make that mindset shift of I'm ready and I'm in, you can go any direction you need to.
Well, we talk about it often in past episodes where we tell people, hey, you don't have to go all balls to the wall and give up your career and everything. There's a great book called Quitter by John Acuff. And this is just for anybody listening based on what you're talking about. And he's just talking about, man, he had to go in and put in the reps during those early morning hours and during those late night hours when he wasn't working his 8 to 5 job, because, one, integrity, be at the company you're at, but during those other hours are proving grounds. Man, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where you get to decide if you're an actual entrepreneur and business owner, or if you're just poking the bear and you don't really know what you're doing.
Absolutely right. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Because that grind is going to continue when you do make that step, and that paycheck goes away, right? Eventually. But in those early days, what a better time to do it in those off hours where you can grind. Absolutely.
That's it. I mean, that's where those are the proving grounds, right? That's just where you're going to figure it out. It's funny. And I know you felt this now, where you've gone from that paycheck to, I don't want to say self-sufficient, because you're always relying on customers, team members, or somebody, right, to make that income. But I used to work in radio, and one of our radio hosts sold his house in the suburbs, went and bought a farm, and after about a year was 100% living off the land, his own vegetables, his own chickens, his own cows, his own pigs. And he said for a season in his life, he never went to the grocery store ever, for when I say a season, I'm talking about years at a time.
Wow.
And he goes, if you've ever lived off the land and haven't relied on somebody else, it's really difficult to go back. And I'm thinking, the second that you sign the front of your own paycheck for the first time, it's really hard to go back.
That's a great point. I don't know that I could ever go back, because once you do that, you found that inner gear, right? That inner, in the triathlon, it's funny, maybe parallel, maybe not, but in the triathlon world, the whole thing was, I heard you guys say it, when you take steroids, right? The reason he thought, if you've ever taken steroids, why you have a competitive advantage, because now your mind knows where your body can go, whether it's been primed or not, right? And I think it's a little bit the same with entrepreneurship, right? When you've tasted that and you've flourished on your own, you can't go back, man, because you can create your own stuff. You can make it. You're not relying on someone else. And it's a great point, because I don't know if I've ever thought about that, but that's maybe that's why we got us serial entrepreneur cats who just keep going business to business and opportunity to opportunity.
That's exactly why. I mean, it's really hard when you know what you're worth because you've gotten out and gotten it. At that point, when you've done it, nobody can tell you what you're worth.
That's right.
And that's what employers do. As much as I love my team, and I do, Michael can bear this out, they're worth what I pay them as far as the numbers go. Their personal value, way more than that. That's not what I'm getting at. I don't want to confuse the two, but the job itself has a value, right? That HVAC unit over there has a value, and I'm only going to pay a certain amount for the HVAC unit for what it can do for me and my house, right? So the same thing happens, but once an entrepreneur steps out and they create their own value and they create their own worth in the marketplace, it's really hard for another person to tell me what my value is, because I've seen it. I know what I can do. You don't. And it is what it is, right? Salespeople can do that to a degree, right? Because you can go out and you can kill it and you can drag it home and make your commissions and everything else. So they have that ability too. That was the first itch for me, was when I got into commission sales. So
that's right. Because you want to set your own value, right? You know what it is. You want to go set it. And you want to go make it. That's absolutely right.
So I'm curious, talking about the Blacksmith Venture side. So you're in front of a lot of entrepreneurs in general. What tends to be the one, why they come to you, but then also what is that always that stumbling block they come across that you guys have to help them understand and correct and move past? And it just seems to be a common theme, like, hey, let me explain this to you, because a lot of people don't get this. What tends to be the common theme when that happens?
The world is changing extremely fast, right? And so Web 3.0 is coming. Social media is its own little monster. You got Fiverr, where you can go pay stuff for, you get your stuff done in like 24 hours and pay $10 for it. So the world's changing really fast. So we see entrepreneurs come in And it's usually, it's the one thing we see is a mindset problem. The one problem that if you peel the onion back a little deeper, it's, hey, we've gotten this business to a certain level. We're working 24/7. We're stressed beyond belief. And I have no idea what to do. And I feel like at any moment I'm going to lose it. And like, yeah, bro, we've been there. And what you'll ask a few leading questions, and what they'll realize pretty quickly is that, well, I'm a little bit nervous about doing that. Have you hired someone to take that thing that you don't like to do and invest it in that person and grow? Well, I really don't want to do that. Or they're a control freak. You know, if they're a control freak, they're doing everything. And so then they're maxed out beyond belief. And so that's where we see usually last 3-4 examples that we've talked to, they get to that like $1 million kind of number, right? Or revenue. For some reason, that's just totally could be happenstance, but that's been a level where the last 4 or 5 companies we've talked to have gotten to, and they're like, I don't know what to do. I'm either going to.
So Andy, I don't mean to totally interject here because I want you to continue that thought, but what I've heard it said over and over again is what took you to $1 million is a completely different skill set than from 1 million to 10. Completely different skill set.
Yep. And so that's, I have that same problem. So what I do in our ventures is we get it through our love and our energy and our expertise. We get a company off the ground or through that point, and then we throw somebody who can go and take that company from inception to momentum phase. So it's a whole different skill set. You're 100% right. Somebody who can balance out, somebody who can let loose of some things, people who know how to hold people accountable. And so a whole different skill set.
That's my problem.
It's hard, right? It's a scale problem. How do you scale, right? And so how that scale is, it's a whole different mindset. And so bringing on that board, like full circle to those guys, they help me kind of realize that, because they're like, hey, Andy, who does your financial modeling? I'm like, oh, dude, I am good at Excel. I do all that. I project everything. You think that's a good use of your time? I don't know. I've just always done it, you know? And so it's every little task you start to see, where am I really winning and adding value? How do I focus more of my time on that? And then staff up everything else. And nowadays, staffing up, you can do it in 100 million creative ways. And so, yeah, you're right. That's it. That's the one thing for entrepreneurs that we're seeing. It's that. A couple of times we'll see guys who are like, hey, I got an idea and I just don't know how to do it, right? Or I've created this cool thing and I don't know what to do. So like what we try to do is put out a lot of messaging around, you know, our story and what we do to try to help find those kind of companies, because it is a ton of fun helping these guys and gals who have creative ideas and helping them grow, because we've been there and it's a lot of fun. And you realize, you know, you kind of talked about being self-sufficient, but once you kind of realize, a lot of times entrepreneurs make it about the money, right? But once you kind of get your household set and you're sort of comfortable in your own cost of living, the rest is just growing business and having fun and changing lives, right? If it's about the money, it kind of just goes away at the end.
Oh, yeah.
Man, he's speaking my language right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. I was on a podcast not too long ago, Andy, and I was talking about, he goes, his name is Josh. He goes, give me your final thought. Like, what is the takeaway? And I said, define what is enough. Because what happens, and you've experienced this, so I know you'll get this, but once you've defined what's enough, when you hit it, you can step out of success and you can walk into significance, because then you're making real impact on your community, on your team, your church, philanthropy, whatever, because you've taken care of yourself. And Michael, you've heard me talk about this before. Mm-hmm. You know, if the only thing you think about is money, that's all you're going to go after. It's like oxygen. If you squeeze my neck, the only thing I'm thinking about is oxygen. But when I have enough oxygen, I don't even think about it.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
And it's not about being rich. It's just about, I don't even want to think about it. So I can go do other things that are more productive.
Take that away and move on. Absolutely. That's totally right. I found that, so getting outside of my circle and getting around some bigger folks who run bigger companies, the one thing they all do, they want to give back. They want to give. And they really just want to see people succeed. And so that's been a lot of fun. And so trying to kind of maybe emulate that a little bit is where my heart's at and kind of where I'm at stage wise.
I love it, man.
It's fantastic. Well, we're coming up toward the end of the episode, but give us some information. How do people find you? How do they find Black Cliffs Ventures? How do people connect with you? Tell us a little bit about that real quick.
I love LinkedIn. So Andy Smith Life is all one word, Andy Smith Life, LIFE. That's my social platform across the way. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I love that platform. People are very kind there, very supportive. The negative Nancy's get kicked out pretty quick. And then our businesses take us into Facebook. So we live there. People are very mean and cruel on Facebook.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, they are.
We call that the bathroom wall of the internet.
Wow, it's a tough one. Yeah, and then we're trying to figure out all the social platforms, but we do have them aligned under Andy Smith Life. And then YouTube is Blacksmith Adventures, where we're trying to help tell our story. And we're pretty early, pretty raw, and pretty figuring it out mode on all of those. So it's been a real thing. But I will leave you with one advice for entrepreneurs that I've recently found in the last 6 weeks, which has been total game changer for me, related to social media and contacting. Relentlessly authentic. When I learned those 2 words, to be relentlessly authentic, it did a double cartwheel of like acceleration for me. And because what I was always the kind of guy who was like, from a social media perspective, very vanilla, right? I like you and I like you and I want you to like me and I want you to like me too, and very vanilla. And so what I realized through some coaching was that, hey man, you want to bring people in your funnel and you want to get the bad people out of your funnel. So you got to be relentlessly authentic to bring the right people closer to you and the bad ones away from you. When I learned that, I was like, man, those are the most freeing 2 words I can ever. Now I can go be me. And it was almost like getting permission to be me. And yeah, so another little tangent, but game changer for me.
That's awesome. I love keeping the right people close to you and let you be who you are.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. I wish more people would do that, because I feel like I've been around people that pretend to be something because they're trying to fit the circles that they're in, and that's really not who they are. And they're afraid to showcase who they really are, and it creates you kind of close up a little bit. You lose opportunities. So
That's right. 100%.
That's pretty good. Awesome. Well, very good.
Andy, man, we have had a blast talking with you. We're going to put all your connections out there on the show notes, so we'll make sure that people can connect with you directly. I would love to hear any last final thought. I know you gave an entrepreneur thought, but any last thoughts you have, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, I would just say have fun in whatever you're doing. We make that a motto amongst our company that I tell the story a lot, but we took somebody who was in our accounting department, which is a group of 2 people. She was accounting, but if you look in her office, she's got flowers, pictures, art that she had done all over the place, and never looked happy, but she was doing a job, right? I'm like, what do you like to do outside of this? And you could see it automatically, like with the picture taking and all that. So we pivoted her after doing an Enneagram test. We pivoted her and realized she's a creative art, absolute not a accounting type role. And she has flourished and blossomed like a rose. And so we always just say within our company, if you're not having fun, let's talk about it and find out what you can have fun in so that you can go excel, because life is way too short to be stuck doing something you don't love.
That is so good. Choose joy. Go after it.
Well, so yeah, in a very simple form, perfect. Love it.
Andy, Michael, what an episode. This is going to be going down as one of my favorites.
Yeah,
for sure.
I really enjoyed it. Just love the perspectives, the advice and everything. Really fantastic. Thank you, Andy, for taking time to talk to us. Coming right off of vacation too. That's right. So we got you as crispy as possible, which is kind of funny, but
this is stress-free, Andy, right?
Yeah, this is it. This is back at it. We're coming into the weekend. Thank you, guys.
Awesome, man. Yes, sir. We will talk to you soon. Catch up with us, all right?
Yes, sir. See you guys.
Thanks, man. Talk to you. If this podcast inspired you to take action as an entrepreneur, we want to hear about it. Send us an email, agingentrepreneur@gmail.com.
And if you like this episode, please consider leaving us a review or 5 stars on whatever platform you're listening to.
Until then, find your dream and keep chasing it.